Hello everyone and welcome to the second episode in my Express JavaScript tutorial series. Now I'm going to go ahead and start off this video by apologizing. I haven't posted a video in almost 2 weeks now, and part of that was due to some external circumstances related to work and school. Some of it was I was losing a bit of motivation, but for sure I'm back now, and I'm going to continue with my every 2 days upload schedule to the best of my ability. And hopefully we can get this Express tutorial series finished and then move on to other tutorial series. Now, in this video, we are going to be going over kind of an intermediary topic between installing Node and actually starting to write Express. And that is, what are REST APIs? Now, REST APIs are the way that or is the most common way that we can transfer data kind of over the internet in a way. And what that means is an API basically is an application programming interface. And all that means is it's some code running somewhere that you can basically you could write a program to ask that code and to get you some data. For example, if a weather service, like a weather predictor service, has an API, you can write code to talk to their API, and their API can give us back some weather data, for example. Or if they are some sort of statistics website, like a YouTube statistics, then their API, we can write code to talk to their API so that we can use their YouTube statistics in our own program. So that's what an API is. It's basically making some data available to other people to be able to use. And the REST portion actually stands for it stands for the type of API that it is. So like I pulled up this Red Hat kind of article here titled "What is a REST API?" because I'm pretty sure it can explain it better than I can. And basically, a REST API is an application programming interface that conforms to the constraints of REST. So REST is kind of like a framework for making all REST APIs work pretty much the same. So basically, if you want to interact with it, REST has a couple of different ways to interact with their APIs. Let me try to find, yeah, they don't have a good list of them. But basically, a REST API has 4 different kinds of requests you can make to it. And all a request means is that when you write code, you can have that code request for the server to give you information, or basically talk to the server is another way to say it. Now, there are, I believe, 4 or 3 kinds of requests that you can do to a REST API. You can do a GET request, which generally will get data for you. You can do a POST request, which will post data to an API. And actually, let me just make sure. REST API, GET, POST, put, and delete, right. So these are the HTTP methods. So, right. So to most APIs, you can do POST requests, which basically a POST request is you are creating something. So for example, if you have a profile on some Facebook, for example, well, you might make a POST request, or some code might make a POST request to Facebook to create your profile. Now, again, when you do a GET request, you are reading data. So if you are talking to a weather service and your code needs to get the weather data, it'll create a GET request. A PUT request is an update/replace. So again, if you already have a profile on Facebook and you want to update the information, you can use a PUT request. Patch, I've actually haven't ever seen patch used, although for the most part, the most common requests are POST and GET. I don't see these 3 nearly as much. And then of course, delete is for deleting information. Now, again, like I said, the most 2 common that we will be using and that are used, that I've seen at least in a lot of APIs, is GET and POST. These are the 2 most common. So again, all that means, all the REST API is it is some code that lives somewhere else, either hosted by a weather service, or it could be hosted by wherever, and we can talk to the API, the interface, to get data from it. So that's all a REST API is. Now, I pulled up a list here of by this website called Postman, and Postman is a tool for making requests without actually having to write code. And they have a list of a bunch of public APIs, so might as well look through this. For example, there is a COVID-19 testing API. So as you can see, this is just a list publicly, and there are some APIs that are public. Basically means you can get data from them without many restrictions. And then there are, of course, private APIs where you might have to jump through a few more hoops to access them. You might have to sign up for an account, and then they'll give you some information so that you can use the API. And in that case, we will be going over that further down in this tutorial series. But for now, so the way I'm reading this is it says COVID-19 API testing, and then it says get California. Now, again, I live in California, so this is the kind of link that I would use. And what it has is it has a little link here, https://covid-19-testing.github.io/locations/state/complete.json. So basically, this is the way that we are getting California information. So if I just copy and paste this into my browser, if I'm not mistaken, okay, so this says not found. I'm wondering if, let me just take a look through this. Okay, so you know what, we're just gonna use the let's find a random API. So actually, instead of using the Postman APIs, we're just gonna look for an online API. So public APIs. So this is all you have to search up in public APIs. You know, again, public just means it's available anywhere, and API means we can get data from it. Now, here's a GitHub kind of repo. So there's a bunch of different APIs. Let's just look at a book API. So Google Books, or no, that's OAuth. Okay, so as you can see here under the auth tab, which auth just means the type of authentication that you need to use. And authentication, again, you have that separation between private and public APIs. Now, if it requires OAuth or API keys, generally that means it's some form of private API or limited API where you might have to sign up for an account or, you know, jump through some hoops to use it. But any of these that say no, that have no authentication, means we can just use them for anything. So let's go ahead and just grab this libgen here. So library Genesis API. And all this will do is, let me see. So this is not a search API. Okay, so never mind. This API does not look good for our purposes. So again, we're just looking through all of these to find a good one. Open Library. So I'm going to click on this and let's see if this is better. So Open Library has developed a suite of APIs to help developers get it up and running. Has a RESTful API. So REST APIs are also sometimes called RESTful, and this means the same thing for the most part. There we go. Okay, so let's go ahead and find this is the book API for a open library. So if we go ahead and search this, let's see. Okay, like that. Okay, perfect. So I'm gonna go ahead and go to Open Library and let's just find a book here. One of my favorite books is Atomic Habits by James Clear. Let's see if that's here. Yep. Okay, so Atomic Habits by James Clear. So I'm at the Open Library, the actual website. And basically I looked up my book using the search. And as you can see here in the URL bar, we have openlibrary.org/works/OL, this whole big string here. And this kind of string of characters here means the ID that the book has on this API. So as you can see here, it tells you how to use it. This is an example. So notice this little link here looks exactly like this link here, except the title is different and the ID is different. And then the way we can actually get our data from the API is just using the ID and then saying .json. So if I get rid of this whole slash here and say .json, and I open this, notice now we get this thing called JSON. Now, I should probably actually add here. Now, basically, JSON is just JavaScript object notation. And all that means is if you're not familiar with what JavaScript objects are, I recommend you check out my JavaScript objects episode on my Intro JS tutorial series. Now, if you are already familiar, as you can see, I'm going to go ahead and copy this and open up an index.js file. And let's go ahead and paste and save, just so we can see a good formatted version. And let me just set it const a equals so that it formats. So as we can see, this data returned by this API is in the form of a JavaScript object, which is why it's called JSON or JavaScript object notation. Now, this A object has a subjects field. So it has habit, habit breaking, behavior modification. So these are the habits of the book. And then it has the key. So this is the ID of the book right here. And then it has the title, Atomic Habits. It has the author information. It has the type, cover, subtitle. So it has a couple of bits of information about the book itself, which is pretty cool. And we can use this information. Say we wanted to make our own kind of book searching tool, like advanced book searching tool, where maybe you could search a book and favorite it and then save your favorited books or whatever, or maybe even get a notification when a book updates or something like that. And basically we can use this API to make that happen. So this is the way we actually get the information from the browser. Notice I can access this API from our browser. Now, if I don't want to use the API from the browser, we can actually use JavaScript code to do that. Now, this might be a little bit fast, but in the previous episode, and let me open up a terminal. I'm going to hit View and then Terminal right here. And again, in the previous episode, we installed the terminal. And basically, again, you need a CD, or actually, I probably didn't go over this, but if you want to open up your folder for your code, you can type in ls to basically list the current folders. So you see my my directory here in the Linux terminal says I'm in Mount, C, users, Matthew, desktop, YouTube, Matthew NYT. So that's the actual folder path that I'm accessing right now. And if I type in ls, notice it says there's a bunch of lists. And if I type cd, which means change directory or change, go into a folder, I can cd into my backend folder and then slash and then express.js, which is this tutorial series. And you can see here on the left-hand side, I have the backend, I have the Matthew NYT, then there's the backend folder, then the express.js /2. And then I can hit tab to autocomplete, but 2-rest APIs. And this is my final folder. So I can type clear to clear that. And once we're in here, I believe I already talked about it, but you can type in node and then index.js and hit enter. And by doing this, if you have node installed correctly, it should do nothing as long as you have very little in here. Basically, when you type node index.js, you are running this node file here. So for example, if I remove this code and just do console.log hello, and I run this again with node index.js, it'll say hello. And I'm going to clear again. Now to actually access the data from our API, we can use something called fetch in Node. Now again, the way you can use fetch is you can basically copy this little link here in the URL bar, and I can just paste that as a string into fetch. And then what we can do is we type fetch like a function, and then we pass it the string of the URL. And then at the end, we want to say .then. And then basically then is another function. And all this is meaning is the fetch is going to get the data from this website. And .then means when it's done, then we can write a function in here, or we can write an arrow function. So basically then takes an arrow function as a parameter, just like fetch takes a string. And then in this function, the function gets something called data, and then we can console.log the data. Now I'm just going to run this to make sure it's working first. Okay, there's a little syntax error. Let's just make sure. Fetch is not defined. I believe, my bad, const fetch equals require. I wonder if we can actually. Let me just make sure. Node fetch. Oh, okay. So fetches actually requires a npm package. So you know what? For now, in this episode, I'm actually going to go ahead and skip on writing the node code. So we're not actually going to write any code in this episode, but in the next episode, we will look into creating REST requests using JavaScript. But besides that, we can use something called the REST client. Now, if you are using VS Code, which I highly recommend, you can open up this, hit this icon here with the 3 squares and the one jutting out here, and you can search up REST. Now, the first result should be the REST client. Now, this basically lets us write REST requests inside VS Code. Now, again, if you click here, there should be a green install button under REST client here. And once that's installed, then you are ready to move on. Now, basically, the REST client allows us to create requests within VS Code. So let's just make sure I have the format right. So you can click on this button here to create a new file, this one right here, and we'll just say requests, or maybe test.request, or no, okay, we'll just name it requests. So again, I'm just creating a file called requests. Now, this little documentation here tells us how to use the client. So I'm going to go ahead and copy this little snippet where it says post and then all of this, and I will go ahead and paste that in. Now, instead of post, remember post is one of the type of requests we can make. We are going to be using get. Now, the reason why is get is basically whenever you enter something into a web browser, you're also using get. So we know that this is a get request that we need to make. And then we can copy this little link here. And instead of whatever is in here, we could just paste this and then keep that. Content type application/JSON. And actually, we can just probably remove this. And we should be able to make the request. Although I might have messed up the file name. Let me just make sure. Okay, perfect. So actually, my bad. So we're going to name this file requests.rest, like that, requests.rest. And as you can see, all I typed is get and then space and then this this link here that we use to get our data. And then I hit a space and HTTP/1.1 just specifies that it's an HTTP request. And if I hit send here, notice another window pops up here on the right, and I'm just gonna fix this. I'm gonna move this up to the top like that. So as you can see here, we get HTTP 1.1 200 OK, and that just means it's OK. And down here is our data. We can see it's the same exact data that we have here on the right. We have the subjects, the key, the title, the authors. So basically, we can use this, this REST file here to create requests in VS Code. And this will be very useful to test our web servers that we're going to be making in the future. So I know this video is running a bit long. Consider it just because I have missed the last 2 weeks. I wanted to get through this big topic next. In the next video, I believe we will be going over, let me just make sure. In the next video, we will be going over creating basic web servers. And basically what that means is we will be creating and starting to write our JavaScript code, and then we will be testing it using this request client here, using like these requests. So if you enjoyed this video, please consider giving it a thumbs up, subscribe and hit the bell icon for notifications whenever I post new videos. If you want to see more videos like this, I recommend you check out the playlist, which is linked in the description, where I'm currently uploading every 2 days. Thank you for watching, and I'll see you in the next one.